I never thought there was anything strange about my neighbor. He was quiet. He kept to himself. I rarely saw him outside. For almost a year, I lived next door to him without ever having a real conversation. Then one night, I heard someone knocking on my bedroom window. 3 slow knocks. I looked outside. My neighbor was standing in my backyard. And he wasn't looking at my window. He was staring at his own house. I had moved into the neighborhood about a year earlier. It was a quiet street with mostly older houses. There were only a few homes on each side of the road. Most of the people had lived there for years. My house was small, but it was cheap, and the neighborhood seemed safe. The house next to mine belonged to a man named Daniel. At least, that's what I learned from the mailbox. Daniel was probably in his late 40s. He lived alone. His house always looked exactly the same. The curtains were closed. The front porch light was usually off, and his car stayed parked in the driveway most of the time. I would sometimes see him leaving early in the morning. He never waved. I never thought much about it. Some people just don't like talking to their neighbors. The first strange thing happened about 3 months after I moved in. It was around 1 a.m. I was lying in bed when I heard a loud noise outside. It sounded like someone dragging something heavy across the driveway. I looked through my bedroom window. Daniel was standing outside. He was dragging a large black trash bag toward his garage. I watched him for a few seconds. Then he suddenly stopped. He looked directly at my house. I moved away from the window. A few seconds later, I heard his garage door close. I didn't think much about it the next morning until I noticed something. Daniel's trash can was empty. The black bag was gone. But it wasn't garbage day. A few weeks later, I started noticing another strange thing. Daniel's porch light would turn on every night at exactly 15 a.m. I only noticed because my bedroom window faced his house. At first, I assumed it was automatic. Maybe a motion sensor, but one night I watched it happen. 2:14 a.m., the porch was completely dark. 2:15. The light came on, and then someone walked past the window inside his house. I froze. The curtains were closed, so I could only see a shadow. It moved from left to right, then it stopped. A few seconds later, the shadow moved back. I watched for almost a minute. Then the porch light went off. I thought maybe Daniel was awake. But the next morning, I saw his car leaving at 6:30. Nothing seemed unusual. I forgot about it. At least I tried to. One Friday night, I came home late from work. It was raining heavily. I parked in my driveway and ran toward the front door. As I was unlocking it, I heard something from next door. A woman's voice. She was crying. I stopped. The voice seemed to be coming from Daniel's house. I stood there listening. I couldn't make out the words. Then I heard a loud bang. I looked at the house. Every window was dark. I thought about calling the police, but before I could take out my phone, Daniel opened his front door. He stepped onto the porch. He looked directly at me. For a few seconds, neither of us said anything. Then he smiled. It was a strange smile. He said, "Everything's fine." I hadn't asked him anything. I just nodded. He went back inside. That night, I barely slept. The following week, I started paying more attention. I noticed Daniel never received visitors, no friends, no family, nobody. But sometimes, late at night, I could hear movement coming from his house. Furniture being dragged, footsteps, and occasionally, what sounded like someone whispering. I told myself there had to be a normal explanation. Maybe he watched television late. Maybe he had an old house that made strange noises. Maybe I was simply becoming paranoid. Then I found something in my backyard. It was a Tuesday morning. I was taking out the trash when I noticed a small object lying near the fence between our houses. It was a child's red shoe. Old, dirty, and covered in mud. I picked it up. There was no child living anywhere near us. I looked over the fence. Daniel was standing in his backyard. He was staring at the shoe in my hand. His face went completely pale. He walked toward the fence. "Where did you find that?" I pointed toward the ground. He didn't answer. He just reached through the fence and took it from me. Then he said, "Don't pick up things that aren't yours." He walked away. I watched him disappear into his house. That was the first time I became genuinely afraid of him. A few nights later, something happened that changed everything. It was around 2:30 a.m. I was asleep when I heard 3 knocks, knock, knock, knock. I opened my eyes. For a moment, I thought I had dreamed it. Then it happened again, knock, knock, knock. This time, it was coming from my bedroom window. I slowly got out of bed. I didn't turn on the light. I walked toward the window and looked outside. Daniel was standing in my backyard. He was completely soaked from the rain. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at his own house. I opened the window slightly. "Daniel." He didn't respond. I said his name again. This time, he slowly turned around. His face looked terrified. He put one finger over his mouth. He was telling me to be quiet. Then he pointed toward his house. I looked. There was someone standing in one of the upstairs windows. A dark figure, completely still. I couldn't see the face. I looked back at Daniel. He whispered, "Don't let it see you." I immediately closed the window. I stepped away from it. For several seconds, I just stood there. Then I heard something, footsteps, inside my house. I froze. The footsteps were coming from downstairs, slow, heavy, one step at a time. I grabbed my phone. I didn't know whether to call the police or run. Then I heard my front door open. I was certain I had locked it. The footsteps stopped. A few seconds passed. Then I heard a man's voice from downstairs. "Daniel." It was my neighbor. I almost screamed. I ran downstairs. Daniel was standing inside my living room. He was holding something in his hand, a small flashlight. I shouted, "What are you doing in my house?" He looked at me. Then he said, "I heard someone come inside." I told him that I had heard the same thing. He looked toward the hallway. Then he whispered, "It's in your house." I asked him what he meant. He didn't answer. Instead, he walked toward my back door. Before leaving, he looked at me and said, "Don't open your bedroom window again." Then he walked outside. I called the police. They searched my house. They found nothing. No broken windows, no damaged doors, no footprints, nothing. The officer told me Daniel must have been mistaken. I didn't tell him everything. I didn't know how to explain it. The next morning, I decided to check my security camera. I had installed one above my front door months earlier. I opened the footage from the previous night. At 2:31 a.m., Daniel appeared on camera. He walked up to my front door. Then he stood there for almost 30 seconds. He never knocked. He never rang the bell. He just stared at my house. Then he walked directly through the front door. I stopped the video. I watched it again. The door was closed. Daniel didn't open it. He simply disappeared inside. I checked the camera from another angle. Same thing. He appeared outside. Then suddenly, he was inside. I called the police again. This time, they took me seriously. The police went to Daniel's house that afternoon. I watched from my window. 2 officers knocked on his door. Nobody answered. They knocked again. Still nothing. Eventually, they entered. They were inside for almost an hour. When they came back outside, one of the officers spoke to me. He asked if I knew how long Daniel had lived there. I told him about a year. The officer looked confused. He said, "That's impossible." I asked him why. He told me the house had been empty for almost 3 years. According to the records, nobody had officially lived there during that time. They searched the house. There were no clothes, no food, no personal documents, no furniture upstairs, nothing that suggested someone had actually been living there. But there was one thing they found. In the basement, a collection of old photographs. The photographs showed the house, my house, and Daniel's house. Some of the pictures were decades old. But the strangest part was this: in several of the photographs, A man was standing in my backyard. The same man, wearing the same dark jacket. And in the most recent photograph, he was standing directly outside my bedroom window. The date on the back was from 6 months before I moved in. I moved out 2 weeks later. I never saw Daniel again. The police never found him. The house next door was eventually sold. The new owners renovated almost everything. They removed the basement completely. For a while, I thought the whole thing was finally over. Then, about 6 months later, I received a letter. There was no return address. Inside was a single photograph. It showed my old house. The photo had clearly been taken from across the street. I looked at the date. It had been taken 3 days earlier. I stared at it for a long time. Then I noticed something in the upstairs window. Someone was standing behind the curtains, watching the camera. On the back of the photograph, there were 4 words, "You're still my neighbor." I never found out who sent it, and I still don't know what happened to Daniel. But sometimes, when I'm awake late at night, I remember the first thing he said to me, "Everything's fine." He said it before I ever told him I heard a woman's voice, before I found the shoe, before he came into my house, and that's the part that still bothers me. Because if everything really was fine, how did he know I was already scared?